When you listen to Abby's podcast, The Breakup Breakdown, this is a really good one right here. And this is the one that I'm always sort of questioning also. Which is more important, like compatibility or chemistry?
Oh, yeah. And especially when you've been as single as long as I have been, which is forever, you hear one thing more than anything else, and it's you're just a little bit too picky. And I think the reason that I'm picky is because I'm kind of looking for that spark. I'm kind of looking for that intense chemistry that everyone talks about.
So before we dive in, and I know that you have a professional that weighs in on this, before we even get in on that, to you guys, which one is more important, compatibility or chemistry?
I'm going chemistry. I feel like compatibility is important, but if without chemistry, man, you don't have anything.
I'm going to have to say chemistry. I think you can, when it comes to compatibility, I think both are important, but for a romantic relationship, I feel like chemistry edges out compatibility ever so slightly, merely because even if you aren't compatible, if the chemistry is there, you can learn to appreciate the other person for who they are.
100%.
I could argue on both sides of this. I think I've been in relationships that lacked one or the other, and they've all equally failed.
I think that's why I've been single for so long, is because I'm unwilling to get rid of one for the other. Like for me, it's sort of like comparing it to a plane. Like, do you want your plane to be able to get you up and into the sky and land, or do you want really comfortable seats with great snacks? Like, nobody wants to be on a plane without comfortable seats and leg room. But at the end of the day, like, if your relationship doesn't have legs, I'm comparing the relationship to the plane. If your relationship doesn't have like the capacity to be able to withstand time, which to me is compatibility, then like, what's the point of being in it? So even though I'm looking for the chemistry, I recognize that I do think compatibility is a little bit more important.
Wow. I've got a million things going through my head. And I'm trying to think of all the people I'm going to offend if I'm honest. I think compatibility leads to chemistry.
Okay.
I think I would weigh more that way.
I think the hard thing is sometimes, especially young people, we try and do things backwards. Like, we find someone that we have really good chemistry with and we try and make ourselves compatible. And that doesn't always work because some people aren't good at being in relationships. Like, I've definitely dated people where I've felt that chemistry, but I was like, if we date for longer than 3 months, like, this ship is going to tank.
Look, and I know people also that have that compatibility in hoping that the chemistry is going to be there. That's what we've been taught our entire lives, right? At least guys, that if a woman isn't physically attracted to you at first, at some point or another, when you guys are compatible, the chemistry will happen. And there are a lot of cases where it doesn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a friend who is like completely compatible with her significant other, but they have no chemistry.
And I feel like I've been in both. Like, I've been in a relationship where we had a lot of compatibility, but no chemistry. And then I've been in one where we had a lot of chemistry and no compatibility. And the first one was more healthy, but it was boring, to be honest.
Yeah, you know what? Now that we're talking about it, I'm so glad we're doing this. I think that I have, because I'm such a dopamine junkie, I think that I have leaned on chemistry most of my life and sacrificed compatibility. And here we are. So at least for me, that hasn't worked.
So that's what we brought up this week on my podcast, The Breakup Breakdown, which we legally, I have to tell you, is on Bert's network, the Pioneer Network. And I had this girl come on who talked about how she sacrificed the spark in her relationship. She was like, you know, this guy's really good for me. He loves me and he feels safe. So I'm going to stay in this relationship. And then, you know, over the course of a year or two, the spark kind of starts to never come. She's waiting for the spark to happen. And even though she's stuck with the nice guy, he turned out not to be a nice guy. She did literally her own Tinder takedown where she paid for a premium service to be able to find this guy. And then when she found his profile, she posted about it on her social media. Very funny. So then I always do a follow-up episode where I have an expert speak on some of the things that come up in the episode. And so this week we talked about the spark. And I had somebody called the relationship boss come on. Her name's Christina Cipriani. And I asked her, I'm like, okay, if I'm with somebody and I'm not quite feeling that chemistry, how long do I wait? Is there a timeline? Do I got to get past a certain point to be able to be like, okay, the chemistry is just never going to happen? And her answer really caught me off guard.
I honestly feel like it's when you have your first fight and you overcome that first fight. Like, this is going to sound really weird, but we avoid the conflict at all costs. But when you know that you can have a hard conversation, get over and through that hard conversation, and then you find that it brings you closer together at the end of that, that's when I feel like, okay, like, we can actually do this. this is like feeling really good for me. Because we think that like conflict is doomed, end all be all type of a moment. But conflict comes with relationships, right? You can't just stay status quo and perfect for forever, because someone's going to eventually speak up for what's not working for them, what they're craving a little bit more of. And so I think that this happens after the honeymoon phase.
So ironically, when you find out you're compatible in conflict, that's when the spark should be there.
And I think, just to address the last thing she was saying, I feel like I'm very attached to that. You can only run away from your authenticity for so long. I've told you guys before, excuse me, I hate the phrase keep the peace, because there is no peace. That's just everybody shutting up. But at some point or another, you'll return back to your authentic self, and that's when things are going to blow up.
And in reference to chemistry, though, I don't recall Bart and I's first fight. Couldn't even tell you what it was about, what it was. However, I do remember our first kiss. And it's one of the greatest first kisses of my life.
Well, I would hope so, considering you're married to him now.
Yeah,
but
we're 18 years in. But that's what I'm saying. Like, even though I didn't have chemistry the first time I met him, but when we went on that first date and we had that first kiss and it was electric, I remember what I was wearing. I remember what he was wearing. I remember where I was standing, in the doorway of my house. Like, I remember everything about it. Couldn't tell you anything about our first fight.
Did he have one of those pre-condoms on we were talking about?
the audacity.
That's what sold me. He's a very, very responsible man.
If you guys missed this, somebody is literally manufacturing and marketing a pre-condom that you put on 2 hours beforehand. So you could be out on your date, and then when it happens, it's already on there.
Yes, sir. We ready.
So if you want to hear more about how important the spark is in a relationship and when you should leave if you don't feel it, you can check out the Breakup Breakdown podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
The Bert Show.